Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And joining us today, finally, we have SuperFan, the creator of DMT Heroes. Thank you so much for joining us, dude.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Infinite flowers to you guys, especially to TJ. I know he keeps the boat afloat.
Right.
And yeah, I'm super psyched to be here, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
What a way to enter, dude. It's like all that love, dude.
Yeah.
That's
Flowers?
great. Flowers for TJ, dude. Hell yeah.
No, wrong button.
Wrong button, dude. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Oh yeah, dude.
So we're here. We're talking about DMT Heroes. SuperFan, you're the kind of like the brainchild of this like concept. We have new technology coming out called this FluxOne and all this stuff with AI, and AI is like really taking storm here in all of like Web 2 and coming to Web 3. So just give us a little bit of your background and kind of introduce what DMT Heroes is straight from your mouth.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an experiential designer by trade. And what that means, that's a fancy way of saying I've been doing interactive design. It's had different buzzwords over the years. And I guess that goes back to 2004. That's a way of saying I've been really focused on UI and UX, but also doing a lot of physical builds. I've been centered in the marketing world, and so everything I've ever done has had this level of polish that creative agencies look for, but kind of a level of storytelling that the old school OG trad marketing agencies don't look for. And I think I'm using those well-developed muscles like in everything I do today. And just to shout out some of my wins in the past, I helped shut down Boston when the Boston bomb scare happened, of the Aqua Teen Hunger Force campaign. When that movie came out was something I did. I've worked with a bunch of musicians, being on tour. So yeah, like I've been at the intersection of art and tech in this very focused way around how it lands, and that's I think I'm embodying that in Heroes. So yeah,
SuperFan.
It's a bit of a ramble, but
can you go deeper into this Boston situation? Like, what exactly did you do?
Oh yeah, sure. So basically, one of my past companies was called Super Touch. It's just accidental that it sounds like SuperFan, but it's and my co-founder at the time, his job was bringing in the work, and he brought in Cartoon Network. At the time, Aqua Teen Hunger Force was all the rage with late night cartoon watchers, and so their movie was coming out, and we made these kind of signs, these LED signs that look like light brights, and I'd send them to friends in different cities, different markets, and they'd hang these up. The idea was people could take them in their collectibles, right? And maybe they'd hit eBay, maybe they wouldn't, but they were about yay big, right? They're kind of large, and we'd put them around like nightlife and stuff. So lo and behold, in Boston, some lady sees one going all blinky. It's one of the characters from the cartoon, and it's lighting up, and she calls the police and says there's a bomb out here. And Mitt Romney didn't announce that he was going to run for president yet. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to be really hard on terror. So they shut down the city. It was almost a week where instead of like rush hour traffic, you had tanks and Jeeps on the roads.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it was a complete shutdown. And we told them, Warner Brothers told them, everybody involved said, this is a marketing thing. And they were like, yeah, but we're not eliminating the possibility that this is a terror attack on Boston. So yeah, that's one of the both fortunate and unfortunate feathers in my hat, and it's kind of like I say fortunate because it made history.
Yeah.
And over the course of my career, I kept stepping in it. Basically, I kept bumping into things that went really dramatic. And it always worked out well for me. So, so yeah, and I kind of landed in Web3 because and crypto, and so we were mining crypto back then. That's all lost. And that's like 2011 era, I would say. But but and that was mostly my partner, who these days is running let me get this right, CoinDesk Studios and Consensus, and he's also in the space, but in a different way. But yeah, it was natural to come here. I couldn't kind of bring myself to keep doing that kind of work when there's so much meaningful stuff that could be built here. I couldn't give a damn about selling another sneaker, you know, and like this is where some life-changing, meaningful, societal changing benefits could be felt from somebody like myself as a lone hacker, cranking away all night.
Yeah, I mean, you know, fascinating background. I mean, every time we talk to you, there's always like something new that like really is like super interesting about like how you got here and like what you're working on and what you've done in the past. And so there's always like something. And when we first spoke, I mean, you had this idea of like kind of leveraging AI in a unique way. And it was very hard to like explain to the team exactly what you were doing and why it was valuable. I mean, I-Man can attest to that.
Yeah, but I don't think it has anything to do with like the actual use of AI itself. I guess, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with I like the recent events of AI, you know, in the context of the industry, the sector of emerging AI, kind of like.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're kind of referring to like the bubble of AI where like all of a sudden every company, including Coca-Cola, has like AI elements associated with the brand and the company, right?
Yeah, but it's more so like tapping into the I don't know, like the feeling of the productization of AI for me personally, right? Because, you know, now we're deeply ingrained into this like art space, this content creation space, which I don't know, this is like probably like a philosophical dilemma like across all of like humanity that we kind of have to like contemplate.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, what is the human elements involved in this now, right? Because obviously technology has far surpassed our capabilities, right? And we're gonna about to witness that with this collection.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're a lone hacker, but the amount of output and like, you know, value you're able to do as a lone hacker with this technology, it's almost
mind-blowing.
It's unfathomable, right? So yeah, but still that question remains for me internally, is like, so what does that do for the value of things, right? Whenever we've kind of like removed our own personal humanity from a lot of these new products, right? Which we don't know actually what the end value is yet, right? Because we're in that experimental era.
Well, the way that I would explain it is, you know how we always talk about how I have like the symphony in my head and I can't play a single note.
Unfortunately, you cannot.
Right? Right. Yeah. And so I feel like AI helps me unlock that capability.
Right.
And I think obviously it's showcasing for heroes here and SuperFan.
Yeah,
I think I could jump in with a note about the bubble though. So value, we all become skeptical of the value of a thing when there's a big bubble forming around the thing. And we've experienced with crypto, but also especially with the metaverse. So we keep reliving this. But you know, it's kind of a where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. Yeah, folks come out of the woodwork with ideas that might not have value, and it brings the curve down, right, with the public perception. But there's a reason that the bubble has formed in the first place. There's some real meat to chew on here. There's some real innovation, and some people can see the light at the end of that tunnel and ignore the noise, right? And I think, crypto, metaverse, AI now, it's kind of a repeat pattern.
Yeah. I mean, just to say like bubble doesn't necessarily mean anything bad, right?
No,
it doesn't mean
doesn't.
like AI was this came and went phenomenon.
Fake news.
Like it's just like now it was actually it wasn't a big deal all along, guys. It's just this is what happens whenever humanity becomes aware of a thing, of like an emerging technology, emerging whatever, right?
Yeah,
people get euphoric and
exuberant.
Overly,
and they overestimate the value of things.
Correct. But
people faded the mouse and people faded the internet
100%.
and people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, so we're aligned in that. So, but there's a lot of context here as far as like why or what AI can do, right? It's specifically leveraging it for any kind of range of content creation. You know, we could talk about the metaverse later because I mean, we've been developing in the metaverse space, trying to support creators for years now, and like this tool has never really been like part of our arsenal.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's absolutely going to become like a permanent fixture within like metaverse development, which is probably a good thing, right?
It's probably the only viable way to actually build out the metaverse.
Probably is, most likely, because we've tampered with several different I guess incentive mechanisms, different like creator models and such, and they work, right? Roblox is out there with a multi-billion-dollar UGC ecosystem, right, where human beings are they're the workhorse engine of like metaverse production.
Yeah.
Right? So it works, but is it optimal? Is that actually like the end game of all this? I don't know. So it's a question of combining the tech and like,
I can't wait to tell you about some stuff that's going to be possible soon. So like,
okay. All right, yeah, let's get into it. So August 15th is the mint. It's happening on Mscribe. There's 4,032 of these assets. And really to put a kind of like a frame around this is that this is a giant experiment.
Yes.
This is an experiment of a new technology, and we're leveraging this sort of adventure style interactive kind of gameplay, but with like really high fidelity art that reflects the particular adventure that you're currently on. So do you want to describe a little bit about what the experience is going to be like when we embark on this adventure, as far as like, kind of like day one, and then we can talk about like future facing potential with this technology.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts that get technical, and I'll do my best to kind of keep it high level. I think it's totally fair to call this an experiment. I've been thinking of it like a beta test, because we're putting all these moving parts to the test for the first time, and they're all layered up, right? So the other thing is we're doing some really new stuff, and I don't know what those will look like because they're all generated by data. So let me go back to the beginning. So this is an ordinals collection where a generative AI backend is making the images based on efficient text inscription. So the same way recursive scripts work, for anyone who's up on how that works, scripted collections that are out there. This is doing that, except instead of drawing the image or animating the image, we're actually creating a prompt that generates a really high fidelity, high resolution graphic on the fly. So when you view it in your wallet, it's created on the fly, and that affords a lot that's never been done before. And one I'll shout out without getting into too much of a ramble is it makes the imagery dynamic. So the provenance is there. You own that ordinal. That's your inscription ID. But what's happening in your wallet is that levers could be pulled so that, let's say you wake up on a Friday morning and your character, who's looking all brawly and in a battle stance, is suddenly not human. They're in zombie mode. It's the example I like to use a lot. And maybe there's some activity you have to do to cure them, or they'll stay that way, right? So those levers are on the back end, and they're triggered by UNAT in a big way. And so what that means is we've taken something that's been used for art, and that art has, for better or worse, had a kind of aesthetic, because it's hard to do something high fidelity when you're trying to keep small scripts efficient, right? And we're going even smaller, and we're going even more efficient, but we can get the kind of fidelity that is really apt for storytelling. Then we're using UNAT to control the storytelling. So we have a choose your own adventure style book, but the blockchain and off-chain data references become the one who's choosing the adventure. And this all started with a seed of like, how can generative AI be used to make a creator tool here, right? And the deeper I went down the rabbit hole, the deeper I saw that this can work really well with the protocols on Bitcoin that are making a lot of stuff possible. So it's a really good marriage of technologies with some unorthodox ways.
So is it right to say that when you mint this, let's say, this pattern happens to be on block number 1. So if I mint block number 1, you're leveraging all parts of like Bitcoin data within that block to help generate this this AI image, or what are you using exactly to be able to produce this high fidelity image?
Yeah, so I'm using the actual inscription ID because it's a lovely long set of numbers as the seed for the character.
Okay.
So there's no chance in heaven or hell that you're going to have someone else's character, because your inscription ID is yours and yours alone.
And unique, yeah.
I'm referencing other types of data. And so I'm focused on DMT patterns in creating the world building. So the stuff in the background, the burning cars on the street in this post-apocalyptic sci-fi story, which we haven't mentioned yet. But that's useful from a DMT point of view, because that there's less change there, right? And so there's some consistency, but we get to have things like some variety. And then I reach out to UNAT to do things like day-night cycles, because I can start to choose from referential data from blockchain or not that is way more active, right? We're not waiting for a block to give us some daily change. That's when I start scraping the mempool, and I'm looking at what's being, what the last block looks like. And I'm honestly, I'm at about 40 UNAT data references right now that informs the story. So I'm like, I'm kind of running with it. It's I'm probably going to prune it back, but right now it's a lot of live data, and it's looking great. But I think part of what this beta test, this experiment is going to reveal, teach me and everybody, is what works well and what can change when there's kind of a full-on launch and maybe a reboot to the story.
Mm-hmm. So when this mint occurs, there is, can you tell us like what the story is going to be like, and give us an example of like what someone is going to go through when they go on this adventure?
Okay, yeah, and this, and you asked before about what the experience is like, so we can get into that here too. So I kind of my inner sci-fi fanboy, like I let him come out and like and start writing some lore. And the story really starts with Satoshi Nakamoto and his team hitting enter that last time to make the chain go live, right? 2009, he hits enter, and it's a catalyst. It creates a wave that's felt far and wide. People who were born around that time, they're imbued with some energy, and they've been living with some talents that they didn't fully understand. But that catalyst, that kind of energy pressure, it takes a while, but it reaches a distant planet, and they're just about now arriving at our doorstep, right? Mm-hmm. It also alerts some other factions. So the story is built around the birth of the blockchain, around Bitcoin. It's Satoshi is kind of a main character, but he's not in story. He's kind of just in story as part of the world building. Mm-hmm. And the writing stops there. So what happens is the data references are going to help the story unfold, and some of what we're going to be indexing is the number of people who are holders, mm-hmm. What kind of characters they are, what their team, if they have multiple characters, what their team stats are like. That's all going to be indexed and taken into account. But then also, the story itself is unknown to us all and requires some actions. Okay. So when people do child inscriptions at these turning points where decisions can be made, that participation in the game is taken into account also. And that's how people get to level up their own characters, give value to their characters, and maybe have more fun playing them. So, and it's a little bit of a ramble too. So I should stop there, but I'd love to talk about one element there that's well, I'll keep going for one more.
Okay.
One more little bit. So the idea is you have if you have 4 heroes, if you buy 4, you get a freebie, and that's something called a human augment. I'm calling them Auggies. And these are characters that were not imbued with Satoshi's energy. We're not imbued with Bitcoin's catalyzing energy at all. These are regular, plain old humans, but the fight's a hard one for us humans. And the heroes need help. And these are heroes fighting in every city around the world. So hot off the lab table are volunteers like us, who get augmented with high tech. And we're tripping over our feet the first days, right? We're not very useful to the rest of the team, but we have the greatest potential for sensory stuff and for ruckus. So the people that hold those, and those aren't going to be minted, available for mint anywhere. So this is almost like a gift to the day one warriors out here who are helping beta test this whole thing. Those are the only people who are going to have these Auggies, who have the potential to really sway what those child inscriptions end up causing in the world. And it might be down to a city, or it might be a worldwide phenomenon. But these Auggies are going to basically carry more weight, maybe, than if you're a healer character, or just a brawly, up close and personal fisticuff fighting character. So
as you're talking,
yeah,
I'm playing this video that you just shared on Twitter, I think like yesterday or whatever it was. So TJ, if you could show that. But here's an example of like what an Auggie could look like. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly it.
Okay.
And I think worth mentioning, a lot of people are having trouble wrapping their head around the fact that this is the actual output. It looks like this. Stills of this are what you get in your wallet. This is not marketing material that's made in a 3D render engine, right? This is the output of the generative AI backend.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So what is the like dynamic evolutionary component or elements within what we're looking at here? Is it purely the background world environment that is like in a fluid state, or is it the characters themselves? I guess you said it could become zombified at any moment, right?
Yeah. So everything's built on a prompt. Many people have played with Midjourney or DALL-E and all these tools. But what I'm doing is I'm not sending a prompt to some engine. I've put the idea of prompting on guide rails, right? So the aesthetic really matches the story, and in the background, data is putting prompts together that drive the look. So when you talk about something being fluid, I guess in a way you could say everything is, but the constraints on an aesthetic and the style of storytelling is there from jump, and then the system takes over from there. It's just not going to start making pink elephants and stuff on its own. That's what the constraints are about.
Interesting.
Okay, so you're saying that if you purchase 4 of these, and by the way, each one is around $20. The 5th one will get dropped to you at some later date. Is this like a different collection, or how does this work?
No, they're just new mints that are going to kind of be manually created and sent out. Okay. With a collection size of 4,032, I don't have a way of guessing how many Auggies there will be in the world, but it's not a lot, right? It's not possible that it's a lot. So the Auggies, it's possible to like kind of really focus on them and make them important to the world building. And the reason they come later is because there'll be a story point later.
Okay, so I'm curious, like the technical kind of rollout for this. So are you saying that you're going to keep like a team allocation, and then you're going to use that team allocation to drop those Auggies to people who meant 4? Or
that's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just curious how that was going to work. Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool. All right, so I guess from that standpoint, you got to be careful of how big the team allocation is if everyone who mints 4, right? because if everyone mints 4, they would get an Auggie. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've been getting great questions this past week since the Discord got fired up, and there's people who want to buy 8 or 12 to get multiple Auggies, and yeah. So what you're saying is likely to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just saying, like, if you don't like set your team allocation properly, you might not have enough in the team allocation to distribute enough Auggies for those who should get one. So I don't even know how to solve that problem.
Well, I'm not thinking of the number of Auggies as a set allocation. That's just going to be driven by how many people mint 4 at a time.
Okay, so but if there's 4,032.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, in that sense, it's on top of. So it's a different collection, but those ordinal inscriptions will be used in game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just curious how all that was working. All right, interesting.
Yeah. Sorry to confuse you there. Yeah, it's on top so that we don't have to figure out some speculative math.
Okay. Cool. All right, so that means that so this will happen on August 15th. People will get their characters. Everyone's going to be completely unique, generated by this AI. Do you want to walk us through like the technical stack, if you want, of how this is like working? Because as soon as you explained this to me, I knew this was extremely valuable, and I knew that you could plug in different functionalities to this AI.
Yeah, totally. So, and I think maybe for the edit and by way of movie magic, I'll get you a video of just walking through the interface.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Like right after this call. And so the way it works is Stable Diffusion. I'm using Stable Diffusion, right? And that's a generative AI platform that is open sourced. It's from Stability, and there's a lot of models out there to play with. So that are also open source. And you mentioned Flux, and Flux is it's brand new. It's kind of hot off the presses, and each day there's some update coming from those folks who also made an open source model. So everything we're touching here is open source with their own legal clearances, and it all plugs in together. So when Stable Diffusion was created, they didn't set out to make standards, but because they were kind of the only open source game in town, it was adopted by a lot of hacker types. And so you started to see a lot of community build up around the way Stable Diffusion works. And I know you guys know how important that is. So that's got its own momentum and its own energy. And it's and there's an interface, a front end called Comfy UI. And this is something that I'd like to turn into an Ordinals creator tool later on. One of the things HIRO's tests is the ability to let other people make their own collections with Gen AI. So HIRO's is going to prove this out, right?
Yeah.
And the back end is also using some of my own tools. So everything's Python. Comfy UI is a browser application, but it controls a ton of Python in the background. It's node driven, so you're connecting nodes up that each one does its own thing, and you connect it with Spaghetti, and each one of those nodes is its own little bit of Python code. So I've created nodes that look for or reference things like the mempool, can reference DMT elements, can reference UNAT that is kind of plain vanilla. So give it a feed and it'll use it. I've made tools that also normalize that data if you need to do that. And so those all lead into this not just being an Ordinals creators tool at some point, but it's a DMT and UNAT tool also, which that accessibility really excites me, right? So getting back to the tech stack. So we're talking about Stable Diffusion, we're talking about Python, we're talking about a front end that exists, and all of it's open source. All of it's something that I'm able to fork and edit, right? And turn into something that's really much more appropriate for the space we're in.
So you're able to plug in different models as well, right? Like different large language models so that you can have like dynamic outputs.
Yeah. One example is when I want a specific look, I can make a LoRa, which is like kind of like a bolt-on mini model. So say it's zombies, I can actually spend the time to focus on zombies, make that its own model, and then flip hit that lever so that that's active when I need that phenomenon in game to have higher weight. But it also works in another way. There's a lot of problems with hands and faces, eyes looking googly and stuff like that in AI. Everybody has seen those. So up until this week, I've been using Claude, which is like ChatGPT, which is, I guess, a little more famous, using their vision modality to look at my images, tell me if the hands are bad, and if it is, it tosses it out, and it re-rolls it. So bad hands and bad eyes were happening less than 20% of the time, maybe 15% of the time. But I was using a whole separate LLM to just let me know if the image has deformities, and then I could chuck it. Flux is a new AI model which looks like it solves that for me. So I get to save on a bit of compute. It's like I said, the stuff's moving so fast. It's if I look away for a few days, I feel like I'm catching up. And timing is really amazing. And it's so great that I can take something that came out this week with updates just yesterday and implement it into something that we're launching on August 15th, right? That's how exciting all of this is, and the marriage of it.
Yeah, I'm sharing a video right now. I'm in.
I've seen this.
Yeah, if you guys don't know what FluxOne is, it's a new kind of like technology by a new group of people, and they have outputs that look nearly identical or indistinguishable from a human, and then you're able to use another AI called Runway ML to animate that human in a way that is indistinguishable. Like if you were to see this, you would assume. And by the way, SuperFan, I'm showing the lady at a conference giving a speech.
I know it.
and she's animated, and you couldn't tell that this is not human. You were gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just curious as to, so you have obviously a very valuable technology stack and a use case and an application for it with great context of what is happening now, what's pertinent to this ecosystem that is in construction native to Bitcoin. So say it all works out. Like how do you envision like the proliferation of this, creating like a mature ecosystem around this where, potentially, because, DMT implications are like a forever scale, right? Whenever you're deploying like a non-arbitrary token or a UNAT, these assets live alongside Bitcoin indefinitely, right? Per the standard. So there's obviously some back-end maintenance involved to make sure that these assets remain renderable into the future indefinitely, right? So is there like, what is the practical approach to making sure like these two models, I guess, coexist indefinitely?
Yeah, so today it's about tooling. Today it's about getting the Heroes collection out so I can prove out some assumptions and prove out a lot of questions about where the direction the tooling should go. But the idea is, first, let's prove out some very basic assumptions that are easy to prove out. And get it in a place where if you wanted to make a PFP collection, if you wanted to make something story-based like this, that you can do it and you don't need me to hold your hand, right? In a bigger picture, I'm a decentralization maxi, right? I'm pretty radical. I've been radicalized about this. So today, Stable Diffusion cannot be inscribed on chain the way 3JS has been, or processing. Shout out to Danny Yang, shout out to the Unchained Monkeys, Discord. That's where I learned about recursion. That's where I got my brain rewired, basically Stable Diffusion is way too big. Danny inscribed 3J as a great cost, as a gift to the world, right? And people are using it. Stable Diffusion would be terribly irresponsible to inscribe on chain. Well, there's a great cost there, but it's also like you can't put gigs like that, like 20 gigs on chain. It's just not good for everybody. So the idea here is that I'm containerizing my work and going for a DePIN solution. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. We could treat it like a tease, maybe.
Sure.
It's not quite alpha because it's not official, but Benny's looking at my spec for what this container looks like. So track might be, and I emphasize might be what is, taking control of the DePIN network in this case. And what the DePIN network is, something that looks like what Ethereum was doing with GPU mining back in the day, but we're talking about people contributing their GPUs, and with RTX 5090s on the horizon, NVIDIA's latest and greatest, this is going to get very interesting. But the idea is that all of this ability, all of this capability, and all of this access to different LLMs and different models into the future are built into this container that people will run on their GPU and be the network. So Stable Diffusion gets separated from chain, but all the provenance is still there because everything is being driven by inscribed parameters. So we're on chain in a way, but the muscle and the part that's doing the heavy lifting is not on chain, but it's completely decentralized and with an economy wrapped around it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I looked into this blockchain or this cryptocurrency called Render, and what they do is they render really complex visual effects. And what they do is, like, you submit this file to them, and and this whole network renders a single frame individually. And so now you have multiple computers rendering one frame of your, let's say 60-second clip. And that render, which would probably take, weeks to do on your laptop, takes a few minutes in this network. And so I could definitely see something like this where you sort of decentralize this process to be able to output, the given, product.
I was just chiming in with that. That definitely satisfies, I guess, the expectations of this, and distributing this so that there's no central point of failure in upholding all this into the future indefinitely. So that's incredibly important. I think you're spot on with your vision on all of this, and it's absolutely the way, I guess, especially if it becomes like a killer application of how to build out the metaverse, or just whatever this asset class that you're introducing is, because we struggle to even give it a label. It's definitely, we were on a Twitter space last night with the DMT community, and people were kind of some people were injecting their thoughts into DMT is great and all, but it shouldn't be applied on things we've already, maybe not shouldn't, but it's not maximally as impactful, I guess, whenever it's applied to things we've seen already in context of Web3, like PFP collections, gaming, even metaverse. We've seen all this stuff before, right? So it's the most optimal showcase of DMT would be something that's actually brand new, right? So I feel like you're teetering on the actual cusp of doing exactly that, right? I can't call this a PFP project. I can't call this a game project in itself. It's something else, right? So what in your own head, what do you label? What do you think of what the heroes actually are?
I think new labels will form around what works and what doesn't as we look into the future. And what I mean by that is, so Render, you mentioned Render, and network rendering in Maya, 3D Studio Max, etc. That's been around a long time. And I had a render farm in my apartment back when I was doing 3D, right? So those tools and that capability of splitting a job up is quite old. And so it's been figured out, it's been proven out. And so Render applied a different kind of business model to something that works. And there were no assumptions to be made there, right? this is wholly new because we're decentralizing. It's still using GPUs, but we're decentralizing Gen AI and different kinds of Gen AI, because when you start to think of how generative AI might be used for AMMs and financial tools, and not doing something like a HIRO's collection, predictive markets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's actually possible within this tooling, and it's not my expertise, but it'll have the ability to be built, and it'll have its own label, right? But to answer your question, what I'd call HIROs today is, it kind of needs an updated label, because it's not just an art collection. It's interactive, it's dynamic, and there's storytelling that's happening here. So I actually don't know what the name of that is yet. But maybe I'll let you in on this. So I have friends at different companies whose minds were kind of blown when they learned about DMT. They're trad people. They're normies from Web 2. One is marketing at Konami. One is works at Netflix in innovation, and one is at Time Publications. They do a lot of documentaries and stuff.
Wow.
And each of them took these are old friends, just old network from professional network, and I was describing how DMT works, right? And I was describing how the data references are at the heart of everything. And once they got it, I could see when the light bulb went off, right? Mm-hmm. And I could see when they experienced what I did from watching you guys, honestly. And it the bomb went off. And then I went further and I showed them some of my output, and I said, now we're using those concepts to drive character design and stories. I'm not a team. I don't have a team building all this stuff out the old school way. On-chain data is doing this. And so my friend at Konami was like, this is the future of video games. My friend at Netflix said, this is the future of TV and streaming. My friend at Time said, this is the future of storytelling. So like, all in their own way, might even have different kind of labels for this stuff, because there's going to be different use cases and different value propositions, right?
Yeah, it's very important to come up with a label, because if this is new, we got to put a name to it so that we can start marketing it. Because you were in the Twitter space last night, and we were harping about the things that are new tend to be the most valuable in the context of cryptocurrency. And I guess the debate was, well, I wouldn't say a debate, but there's a discussion on, the idea of new has like a presumption, and that presumption comes with like a historical acknowledgement of what has happened in the past. And obviously AI is like absolutely new. DMT hasn't happened before. Like there's no technology that leverage block data in the way that DMT is leveraging block data. So all these things are new. But when you apply these things, and let's say the first thing is like a PFP, like it's something that we've seen before, so we can attribute some like historical value proposition, because we've seen a PFP go to $250,000, right? There's a chance that this new PFP could also do the same thing. But when you actually introduce something new like HIROs, there isn't a counterpart that you can just kind of point to and say, this could be that.
Yeah.
And from a marketing standpoint, a crypto standpoint, that's actually a big deal.
Yeah, and then the fact that you're introducing an additional framework, I guess, that kind of expedites the market proliferation of this new potential meta, right? This isn't just another standalone act, right? Which we typically don't agree with those types of. I mean, it's fine, but the most optimal way to roll out a project or whatever is to be sure that it's a replicable event, right?
Yeah, it's not a one-hit wonder like Thong Song and Cisco.
That's right. No, I mean, as great as the Thong Song is, right?
That's his go-to one-hit wonder.
Yeah, he unfortunately didn't create like a thong meta, right?
Yeah,
we should have like thong everything. Everything should be a thong. But yeah, so that's what's exciting is like innately this is an interesting project, but I can absolutely foresee a future where people will also align with like, this is the most optimal way to kind of like progress this space forward. Like, let's use technology in its most optimal form to produce a new class of products that's native to Web3, right?
Yeah.
Especially with Bitcoin and DMT and stuff. All of this has never been done before.
Yeah.
Right. So, sorry. Yeah. I just kind of going off on like I guess our minds are blown
I can see
too.
the Thong World collection doing well.
Generative thongs, dude. Why not? Oh yeah.
And we all love celebrity collections, right? Let's get Cisco on board. But yeah, I hear you. And I kind of smiled when you mentioned $250,000 collection, because it's unfortunate that is what validates things for people and kind of puts a pin on the timeline to make something historic, right? Like it sort of stunts us when that happens. It holds us back because it creates all these perceptions. But I guess it just comes with the territory. Just keep building.
Yeah, it absolutely does come with the territory, and I think that's something that creators, developers, whatever, battle with, is like this contention with the idea of like, do we really have to satisfy the degens in everything we do? Right? Like I feel that sentiment consistently. Is like
I see where they're coming from though, because that tends to be the audience currently in crypto is the degens. But what the degens are actually looking for is the new stuff. They don't know it. They're not only looking for memes, they're looking for like speculative new stuff. That's what they're actually looking for. It's sort of like Henry Ford saying, well, what do people need? It's like, well, if you were to ask them, they would need a faster horse.
Right. But I think the dilemma comes from like, as a creator or as a utilizer of this technology framework, like that becomes like SuperFan said, like that's my mode of achieving some sort of success, like a component of like, this is actually valuable. Is like I made a new class of degens that much more wealthy, right? As a result of what I've built. Right. As opposed to I've actually produced a tangible, valuable thing for humanity that doesn't necessarily mean that their bank accounts have now gone up.
Sure.
Right. Some other tangent or facet of their reality has been improved as a result. Right. Like that is like the battling conundrum with Web3. Is like, I agree. Can anything like that actually happen?
Yeah, I mean, we have this conversation all the time. It's like when you look at the AI sector, they're producing products. They have like, there's tons of websites. You go to them and you can subscribe and you can use their product. But in crypto, there's none of that. And so in crypto, typically you have to come up with like new ways to generate some sort of income, whereby it's like doing a token generation event or selling PFP projects. But those have like limited applications as from the perspective of a product. There's nothing you really do after that. What's cool about Heroes is you can do stuff with it.
But Will, there's also haters saying AI is a scam too. So that stuff also happens there. And I'll tell you why I love my degens. The degens, and that's the collective mind, right? The world of people who are looking at the 4-hour charts. It's not exactly me, but there's a lot of value in that persona, in the way that person thinks. It's there's a go-to market here and a provability of something that lies in that. You don't have to build the business, take it out to market, do your marketing and see what the greater market thinks of things. The degens run at light speed, and so we have this amazing tool of being able to get that feedback and react to it and flip it and do so with the mindset, with knowing that they're looking at 4-hour charts. And that's incredibly powerful. I think that's amazing. And 6 months ago, because of compute costs and because of how slow these AI models ran, it was not possible to wrap a business model around these ideas that degens could get behind, because they want to buy in low, flip it fast, right? But today, because of latent consistency models and advances that make all this stuff run faster, it's possible now, in a way it wasn't very recently, to make a $20 mint that has all this innovation built in and attract the degens, but then also attract the degens who are interested in the tech that's underneath it maybe. But there's skeptics coming at me right now also.
Yeah.
And I get where they're coming from. Like none of them are wrong, you know?
I just find it surprising that, there could be skeptics around AI. Maybe like the optimal use of AI, I can see, skepticism around that. But man, I just, it's sort of like, if you were to understand cryptography and you were introduced to Bitcoin back in like 2010, and you didn't see the value in Bitcoin automatically, is like a shock to me.
Yep.
And so I think the application of AI as far as like image generation, and one of the things I want to talk to you about is like 3D model generation, that has like huge applications, right? And so can you tell us a little bit more about like how you can plug in different like large language models to produce other kinds of assets besides, just images?
Yeah. So this is the freaking superpower that I have in front of me at this computer right here, right? I'm able to use the same workflow that I'm using to make HIROs, or to make the Auggies, and I can start outputting 3D objects. It's not me starting from scratch.
Yeah.
It's one module in the stack, and that's incredibly powerful because I sat down to figure out how to do this. And in a couple of hours, I was making things that looked like potatoes, old potatoes, in fact. So it wasn't very good, but it didn't take me long to iterate and start getting usable looking objects. I think the fidelity can get much better. So I'm going to keep working on it. But the point is, I'm not putting HIROs to the side to do this. It's actually on screen at the same time.
Yeah.
And the tool set and the way Stable Diffusion works, even just the word diffusion, that we're diffusing something out of these huge data sets, it's all working the same way. The computer doesn't care, the tooling doesn't care if it's a 3D model, if it's a song, or if it's an image. And that's a superpower we don't see in other industries and other verticals. Like you kind of got to go back to the drawing board if you want to do such a modality change.
So can you control the amount of polygons the output like produces?
Yeah, and I'm a little limited by my hardware right here. Hopefully that'll change soon. But the idea is, so in the video where I'm doing generative 3D objects, that starts with an image. So in the case of looking at a truck, I'm first starting with a truck generated on a blank background. So that right there looks very much like the HIROs process.
Yeah. But
then behind the scenes, I'm making that truck in different views. And with those different views, a 3D model can be made that's textured and made of 3D vectors, right? So that's that's it.
No, that's huge. Yeah, because if you had to kind of like rebuild everything just to get this output, like that's one thing. But the fact that you don't have to change much in order to get this 3D asset, like that's a big deal, because now you can kind of experiment a lot faster. And we have our own use cases for this 3D capability, because like we were talking about how there isn't a single entity or even a group of people who are going to build out the metaverse. And I think tools like this is going to contribute heavily to the construction of like a virtual environment. And this is going to be an important tool for everyone to get their hands on, because we might see like a particular application in the metaverse, but someone else might see something else, right? So this is exciting. And I'm showing the video right now. And so the images that we're seeing here, like of a robot and then a chair and a truck, those were all AI generated. And then the end of the workflow, it produces a 3D model.
Yeah. And Twitter kind of cut off the beginning of the video, which was a bunch of robots actually, and more detailed stuff. But the workflow, real quick in a nutshell, there is, you see the image being created. The one all the way on the left is the diffused view of it, right? Then it takes it out of latent space, which is how the model thinks, and puts it into RGB space. It makes an image out of it. And what you don't see happening on screen is it's also making the front view, the back view, the right view, the left view, and I have those at a bit of an angle on purpose, because when I get those kind of cubed views of things, I'm seeing as much detail as I can because of that angle offset. And then the AI is reaching into its huge diffuse data set to know how to create that from those views. And the art in this, not the science, is in getting those views right. So when I mentioned I had old potatoes resulting, it's because you need many views. And if I give it even more views than front, back, left, right, top, it's going to get better. And so,
I see. Okay, so I was interpreting I was interpreting that it was producing 3D assets based off one image, but there's multiple images.
But that's under the hood.
Yeah.
Pardon. That's under the hood. It is. I am generating the image you're seeing as one image, and then as a secondary step, making it create the multiple views before it can create the 3D object. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about kind of another angle to this. So we have block drops coming out pretty soon. The feature is going to be supported by Tap and Track and those guys over there. How can you or your community leverage block drops to heroes specifically? And just give us an example of what you're thinking about leveraging block drops with heroes.
Yeah, I think EV from NatCats put it best about block drops. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but he tweeted something like, block drops are an amazing distribution mechanism, right? It's a way for people to be able to add assets and think like a store or a collection of assets that now you can, in a modular way, add to something like a bitmap, to a parcel. This was difficult before because you needed to code it up. You needed to import other things recursively, and there's still code happening. But the idea of an asset being able to be via block drops, be in context already is amazing. And I think making these 3D objects become a block drop to a parcel, it marries them, and that's great. The downside is that a high fidelity 3D model with textures is pretty heavy. So that's not something you actually want to inscribe, right?
Right.
And as a decentralization maxi, I don't want to hear that that's sitting on AWS, right?
Yeah.
So the binary's got to sit somewhere, but not in the case of a generative approach. It doesn't need to actually live anywhere. It doesn't exist until you ask to use it. So the block drop in this case is the inscription that goes out and makes this 3D object. You use it in the session. Let's say it's a game, right, in your browser. Those 3D objects, the couch and the potted plant and the thing that makes a house, a hangout, is temporary. It's temporarily there, and it's coming from those inscriptions. So it's on chain, it's immutable, it's got provenance, but we didn't have to inscribe all of this. And so the cost, the efficiency is kind of like it doesn't exist any other way. And that's where the power of doing this generatively comes in.
So how does the image get updated based off that block drop?
So the image, so in this case, I would say, and I'm looking into the future here. I don't think this is sorted out yet, but I think the way that'll work is, if you want a couch in your space, you want to drop that, or a house on your parcel. I don't think you want that house to deviate. You want it to look like the same house you pull up every time it's generated again. So if you created it through this generative tool, it's possible for that to be reliably the same 3D object every time and look the same. And it's so that every time you enter that parcel you're playing in that parcel, everything comes up as expected. I don't think I'm answering your question.
But I was just thinking about it from like the hero's perspective, because like we were talking about how you might be able to block drop weapons to the individual hero, and let's say you execute that, and people inscribe the block drop because they want a weapon. I know that in ordinals that you can, as a script, you can know when a parent has a child, and so you could say your AI image output now includes a weapon with your character.
Yeah. So this actually comes from requests in my DMs. So so there was one dude, and there's a few who kind of had the same request right around the same time, same day. So that was pretty interesting. There's a dude who's Egyptian, and he's looking forward to the game aspects of Heroes, and he wants an Egyptian character who uses a traditional ancient Egyptian sword, right? He doesn't want a Luger or an AK-47, right? Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So so he's got an image in mind, and he asked if that's possible, and it's like, hell yeah, the tech totally makes it possible as long as the model knows what that sword type is. And the win here is for him to have the character in superhero stance, right? But when that sword that he wants is block dropped to that character because maybe it wasn't designed with that sword, now that's a child inscription, and it appears in the image. So the background hasn't changed, the character hasn't changed in the face or in their clothes, the position of the body hasn't changed, but now they're holding that sword, and it's as if it was always there.
This is such a good example of why I like this mint is so important, because there's going to be things that the community contributes to in terms of like formulating this product, as we were talking about earlier, that we want, people to kind of join this experiment, this beta test or alpha test. And because who knows like what the community would want from something like this, as far as like, executing an adventure, doing a block drop, maybe customizing, specific block drops per user and having some sort of sustainable kind of platformatized way to do that. And so that's why we're encouraging everybody to kind of join us on August 15th for this mint. I think this rollout is going to be very interesting just because the product is so unique. I guess we have a few more minutes, Superfan. Do you want to have like any last words as far as the mint goes, August 15th, and what people can expect from, I guess, like participating in this community?
Yeah. There's something important that we haven't touched on that I'd love to get out there, which is, I kind of always wanted to allow people to shape their own teams and shape their own characters, so I really love Mscribe because that PvP mechanic is super fun. And it also protects us from sniping, right? So so that's like an easy yes, let's do it that way. But what it introduced was kind of, it feels like the trading card games that come in a pack and you don't know what's in the pack because you're doing the mint and you don't know what you're gonna get. And I really wanted people to be able to affect their characters in some way. So you're not going to get this day one, but the beta phase holders are going to be able to affect their character. So if you're really not happy with the character you get, I'm going to make an association with a new set of parameters that the Gen AI can create, so you can drive what a character is going to look like, but it's still married to the original inscription ID of what you inscribe. So that's coming later, and this won't exist in anything that happens with the tool in the future, because I think we'll sort that out. But that question's come up a few times, and yeah, I think it'll be fun for people to kind of create their team, shape their team, because at the end of the day, this is a turn-based game, and it might be the slowest turn-based game in the world, but it's still characters you're going to live with. These are living characters that you're looking at for potentially years, right? And it should be it should be the deck in your hand that you want, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I knew this was kind of like a big deal as soon as we first talked about it, even though it was like in its early like form in terms of like what the product was going to end up being.
Yeah, these are typically the types of things that like stand out to us, just, you know, independent of the fact that this kind of emerged from within like the DMT space, for which we're heavily like attentive to, right? It's just, it checks all those boxes of like potential discovery of like all these unknown value vectors that could emerge from this, similar to like Bitmap, right? When we discovered Bitmap, there's so much potential.
Yeah,
right? There's so many ways that this can proliferate, and the community can contribute to steer it in this direction or that direction, or, you know, maybe we're actually going to get to a sensible conclusion for this whole like Web3 metaverse sector. It's like we figured it out, right? So there's an elements of that, right, with this as well. Yeah, and that's what makes it exciting to be a part of. And, you know, I could definitely see a pretty large community that's going to align and agree and be equally as, I guess, gravitated towards that potential, right? So we definitely are going to be following along as close as we can. We're going to be part of this community as well. You're welcome back anytime, SuperFan, to continue like to, you know, give progress updates on what's happening in this ecosystem. And yeah, man, thanks for everything you're doing, sharing with us. This is, I mean, you say you're a fan of us. We are also fans of you. You know,
today we've become super fans.
There you go.
Nice. Yeah, and I think maybe a good note for me to go out on is just that you guys have shown a lot of love to this project, and that's what I've been getting far and wide. I mean, yeah, there's skeptics here and there, but in general, different communities have really, you know, there's been open arms everywhere, and I think that's something special that happens in this space. It's been great. Like, if I have questions, I get answers, and it's because people really want to contribute and help. And I think that ethos is what'll keep us all from getting jaded. You know, we're gonna be here with full gusto straight through.
Yeah, man. So thank you so much for your time. All the links will be in the description for everybody. Make sure you join Mscribe's Discord as well as SuperFans Discord, where all the alpha is going to be happening on SuperFans. But the mint date will be August 15th. The link will be provided here pretty soon. And we're excited to embark on this AI adventure. I mean, this is unlike anything anyone has ever seen. So thank you so much, SuperFan, and everyone. We'll catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.